Session. We'll get started on our business portion of the meeting. We need to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for
It stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I need an approval for the board agenda, please.
I'll make the approval.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Frazier?
Mr. Davidson.
Yes.
Mr. Isgro.
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Sprague.
Yes.
Mrs. Baker.
Yes. Next, we have an approval for the minutes from the prior meeting.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. First and second, any discussion? Mr. Frazier?
Mr. Isgro.
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Sprague.
Yes.
Mrs. Baker.
Yes.
Mr. Davidson.
Yes.
Okay, I don't see anybody from city council. Nobody for public participation. Mr. Holbrook?
Thank you, President Baker. I will keep my comments brief tonight. We just finished the first quarter of school here in Hamilton, and you know, for the first time in 3 or 4 years, I feel like there's a sense of normalcy to the school year from beginning to now, which is exciting. A lot of energy in our buildings, a lot of good things happening, and you know, we need to be grateful for all of those things. I do want to highlight a couple of items coming up. First, this Friday night, Hamilton High will be hosting the first round of the state playoffs against Sycamore, and that's at 7 o'clock. And if you haven't done so, you can still purchase tickets online or at the gate. Secondly, we do have a professional development day coming up on Election Day, which is November 7th, and there will be no school for students that day. And finally, we do have an extended Thanksgiving break. We have the entire week of November 20th. And so those are some things to highlight and put on your calendars that are going to be coming up within the next month. That's my report for this evening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Holbrook. Next on the agenda, we have need an approval for the Board of Education Policy 3120.04, employment of substitutes.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
One second.
Thank you, Mr. Sprague. Any discussion? Mr. Frazier?
Mrs. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Sprague.
Yes.
Mrs. Baker.
Yes.
Mr. Davidson.
Yes.
Mr. Isgro.
Yes.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have a release and settlement agreement proposed for the DeWeese lawsuit. So I need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Steve.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Any discussion? Mr. Frazier?
Mr. Sprague.
Yes.
Mrs. Baker.
Yes.
Mr. Davidson.
Yes.
Mr. Isgro.
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews.
Yes.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have the TV Hamilton agreement that was before you. I need a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Sprague.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Any discussion? Mr. Frazier?
Mrs. Baker.
Yes.
Mr. Davidson.
Yes.
Mr. Isgro.
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Sprague.
Yes.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have our consent agenda. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Isgrove. Any discussion? Mr. Frazier?
Mr. Isgro.
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Sprague.
Yes.
Mrs. Baker.
Yes.
Mr. Davidson.
Yes.
Okay, next we have,
Human resources.
oh,
Number 9.
next on the agenda, or actually before that, we have the human resources. I crossed it out for some reason. So I need a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Isgrove.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Discussion? Mr. Frazier?
Mr. Davidson.
Yes.
Mr. Isgro.
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews.
Yes.
Mr. Sprague.
Yes.
Mrs. Baker.
Yes. Okay, now we have the finance agenda. Mr. Frazier?
Thank you, President Baker.
We only have a few items tonight. We have the normal financial reports, the treasurer's reports, which include the bank reconciliation, the cash position report, and also cash flow analysis report. We have one confirming purchase order for American Sound and Electronics in the amount of $5,529. And then we also have a donation this evening from Hamilton German Village to Wilson Middle School Chorus in the amount of $300. And those are my items for this evening.
Any questions for Mr. Frazier? Need a motion to
I'll
accept the...
make the motion, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Isgrove.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Sprague. Any discussion? Mr. Frazier?
Mrs. Matthews,
Yes.
Mr. Sprague,
Yes.
Mrs. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Davidson,
Yes.
Mr. Isgro.
Yes.
Okay. We now have, our next meeting will be Thursday, November 9th, beginning at 4 p.m. here at the board office. And that will be a business meeting and
Work executive
a business meeting. Yep, thank you. I need a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.